It's a sad day in America when you can look directly into the camera and lie to the American people and no one calls them out on the carpet. This is the state of our government and how things is definitely unraveling fast when the lies no longer make sense. Let's talk about that. Okay, so I want to take a minute, share some thoughts in reference to some comments from Secretary Bessent, as well as just some indicators that point to an obvious lie. But then again, when everyone is in sync with the narrative, it's hard to disseminate truth. So you can expect more lies. And of course, no one's going to call out the details of it because no one was willing to take the blame at this current moment of where we're at and where things are heading. So I want to thumb through a couple headlines here, share with you some audio, and then share some graphs and stats that paints a much more realistic picture outside of what we're being told from the mainstream media. So let's just jump right in. And as always, if you guys want to see more of these little quick takes, definitely hit that thumbs up button to show your support for the channel. And more importantly, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you're keeping your eyes on. And also make sure you subscribe so you never miss one of these little quick takes here. So let's jump right into it. Here we have a news report from yesterday. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is on Fox News, and it's a 53-second clip, and it basically just points at everything that is wrong with our country and the fact that you have mainstream media looking to promote more propaganda intentionally, and no one calls into question the reality of what's happening in the streets. And so I'm going to play this, and then I'll get into some proofs as to how his statements are a complete lie and is nowhere near close to being truthful.
I think next year we're going to go back to what we had in President Trump's first term, which was very solid, high, non-inflationary growth. So we're going to see very strong job growth. And Jesse, I think we're going to have what I call parallel prosperity. Main Street can do well, Wall Street can do well. It's been a long time since Main Street's done well, and that's what happened in Trump 1.0. Hourly workers did better than supervisory workers. The bottom 50% of households had a net worth increase that was higher than the top 10%. So we are going to see Main Street surge here along with Wall Street, which we've already seen. So I think it's going to be a great year next year. I think inflation's going to come down. We're seeing gasoline prices come down. We should see interest rates come down, which will help the housing market.
So there you have the idea of a parallel prosperity where Wall Street and Main Street will do well at the same time. And once again, it's this forward notion of next year. It's always going to be next year. It can never be right now because the reality is completely different. And of course, today we have the ADP numbers come out, and the measly 42,000 jobs that were created is minuscule compared to the hundreds of thousands of jobs that were lost in total over the last several months. Nevertheless, this previous month of 42,000 is very minor. And it's stuff like this that really triggers me, because at what point will anybody begin to share truth? And I know it's not possible to share truth at this current moment because of what's at stake. We're going through a completely rebooting of the system. And so narratives matter. And that's why there's a petition more so by Thomas Massie to basically repeal a certain law that allows the government to promote propaganda within the U.S. to the citizen itself. So that's something that people need to pay attention to and basically support Thomas Massie in his efforts, because clearly Trump has it out for him. So we definitely need to be aware of that one. But let me give you some counter narratives that go along with that statements that were just made by Bessent. So real quick here, this is a post associated with that, and this is from Ben Norton. And so give an idea, Ben Norton is a journalist, analyst, political economist, 325,000 subscribers. So definitely he is giving a more truth than the mainstream media, but he shares some graphs here to just expose completely everything that was just said on national television to the American public. It says billionaire Bessent and other U.S. government officials in the opposite land. It says the job market is weakening with huge layoffs. Inflation is rising, especially due to Trump's tariffs. 4/5 of Americans live in areas in recession. The stock market is in the biggest bubble in history, driven by irrational AI hype that is not based on fundamentals. It says Main Street is suffering. The only part of the economy that is doing very well is Wall Street, where hedge fund manager Bessent comes from. But when the AI bubble pops, things will get even worse for everyone. And just to highlight some of the graphs here. So here on the screen, this is a display of recent layoffs within our country. So the labor market is clearly weakening. So literally from some of the smaller layoffs all the way to UPS and Amazon on the far end of the screen, to have a measly, as it shows here, where we got. So to have a measly 42,000 jobs in October, but the labor market is still not great, according to information provided to us this morning. And so literally the chart I just showed you of all those major layoffs gives a much different story. Okay, so we know the lies. We understand them clearly. Shouldn't be surprised. Here's another chart associated with Ben Norton that shows inflation or consumer price increases. And as of September, according to this graph here, we were already surpassing the January 2025 high of 3%. And so as of now, it's above 3%. And in that video, Scott Bessent said it's coming down, and he anticipated coming down more due to the tariffs and things of that nature. But once again, looking at the graphs, they tell a different story. And then here you have consumer confidence or lack thereof. U.S. consumers bearing more than half the cost of tariffs so far, Goldman Sachs says. So we have Goldman Sachs out here, once again, telling a much different story. And then last, here is the total share of population in economic expansion. And so as of right now, we are trending so low that clearly the other previous lows were all in recession territory. So if we're right here at this current moment and dropping lower, the small blip in 2020 during the health situation was a gray bar. And then you go back to 2008 through 9, and that same ballpark was also a recession. So you got to ask yourself a serious question. How come the mainstream media doesn't talk about things like this, but they let Bessent come on and spew propaganda? It's simple. Let me just share with you why that is. So here you have something that most people may not know about. It's the Smith-Monk Act, and ultimately it was put in place during World War II. It says the U.S. Information and Educational Act of 1948. It says it was signed by President Harry S. Truman in January. It says the act was developed to regulate broadcasting on programs for foreign audiences produced under the guidance of State Department and prohibited domestic dissemination of materials produced by such programs as of one of its provisions. So literally, this bill was brought into existence for the idea of the U.S. government being able to share information with foreign entities, i.e., citizens that might be living abroad, or just communicate what's happening within our country to the world. But of course, in doing that, during war times, you're not going to be telling truth. You're going to be telling lies, creating a different narrative. And so this was reversed, and they allowed, meaning Obama, says the original version of the act was amended by the Smith-Monk Modernization Act of 2012 under the Barack Obama, which allows for materials produced by the State Department and Broadcasting Board of Governors to be made available within the United States of America. And so in 2012, under the administration of Barack Obama, it became lawful for the government to disseminate information within our country. And of course, if they are the overseers, regulators of that information, there's no governing authority that can oversee them. Therefore, they can spew and share whatever information they deem necessary to accomplish their goals. And here we are now, all the major news sources saying the same tune, allowing Bessent on air to basically tell lies. Shouldn't be a surprise. That is allowed. And so where are we going with this? This is simple. We got graphs to tell a different story. We have a counter narrative with actual data. The stats don't lie. And this parallel prosperity that Bessent mentioned is complete hogwash, because even if the average Joe and Jane in Main Street benefited from this, it's all predicated on asset price appreciation, i.e. their portfolios, their 401ks and things of that nature, is how he would measure the prosperity being enjoyed by the average Joe and Jane. And when you look at the current, as of right now today, S&P 500, as we see, everything is driven by the hype from the AI section. And so as of now, so that was yesterday, but it didn't look too well. It was all red. And so as of now, it's going to be interesting to see how they continue to keep this narrative of everything is hunky-dory if literally everything is hedged upon AI and the continuation of this technological advancement that has taken place in our country. So as long as the funds flow to those areas, people's portfolios look bigger, greater, that's the only prosperity that the American people can actually partake in until there's a certain point when it must come down. But along the way, all of Wall Street, who's positioned ahead of the holders of those funds and stocks and things of that nature, they're reaping the rewards regardless. So these are some things worth talking about that you won't hear from the mainstream media. And I'd anticipate hearing more concerns as we get closer to Christmas, because once again, here's another article. Most U.S. consumers expect higher holiday prices and a weaker economy, survey finds. So this survey, to give you some insight into it, it says here, most consumers surveyed, 57% said that they expect the economy to weaken in the year ahead. The consulting firm found in a poll of roughly 4,000 respondents. So 4,000 people, more than half, felt that things were going to get worse in the days ahead. So that's just something to consider. And it says that compares with the 30% who expected a weaker economy ahead of the year ago holiday season, whereas 54% in 2008, one of the years of great recession. So literally, the year heading into the GFC crisis that was obvious, 30%. And yeah, these are some interesting stats, my good people. But as always, just taking a minute sharing with you an alternative reality, an alternative version of truth that the mainstream media can't give you, because once again, if they told the truth, they'd be out of a job and they wouldn't be able to accomplish their agenda of helping to restructure, reset the economy. So anyway, curious to hear what you guys think. If you found value, hit that thumbs up, drop a comment, and I definitely look forward to bringing more news to you. Peace.